So, the other thing I wanted to discuss was like favorite 80s movies here. All right. So we got to know
Ooh.
like what's Katie's favorite 80s movies of all time.
I should have come prepared, eh? Definitely, I don't think in this order, but definitely Breakfast Club
Okay.
is in the top 5. And then, gosh, there's so many. Dirty Dancing. I mean, this might be cheating, but the 80s Rockies. So 3 and 4. Man, I know I'm missing like a ton. Um, oh, oh no, that was 70s. I was going to say Fast Times at Ridgemont High. That might have been 1980 or
Yeah,
1979,
it's
something like
close on
that.
the line. Yeah.
Um, Weird Science. I
Such a great movie.
love Weird
Love
Science.
it.
Oh, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I mean, if I could just put all of the John Hughes, actually not all of them, but Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Uh, those are probably the big ones. And
Yeah.
then I like mob movies a lot too, but that's a whole separate genre probably. What about you? What are some of
Interesting.
your favorites?
Uh, this is also very difficult for me because like I love so many of those movies. I was definitely a big Arnold Schwarzenegger guy. And like I love Commando. I was very into Commando.
I
Actually,
don't love Commando
I
for
don't know.
some
I just
reason.
love it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like pure Arnold. Like it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like
If you're an Arnold guy, I can see that.
yeah. I was very into Rambo. Listen, typical little boy stuff, like
Of course.
blowing up stuff.
One of my dogs is named Rambo. So,
Wow, a little
yeah.
John Rambo action there.
Yeah.
Was really into that, but like I said, Goonies is probably up there for a lot of kids. But I love
Mhm.
that. Spaceballs was very into Spaceballs, but I think that was a little bit
Really?
later. And I'm not a big fan of usually Mel Brooks stuff, but I did like Spaceball for some reason. I liked a lot of stupid stuff. I
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah. Me
I
I
was like, you know,
yes.
um, and then I I really liked. I'm blanking on it here for it, but I like this movie called like My Science Project. Again, like obscure stuff. It was pretty obscure. But
I don't know if
like
I've
Dennis
seen
Hopper
that.
was in it. It was awesome. It was like so
Okay.
weird and funny. And then I loved Summer School too. I loved that movie. I go deep with this stuff, very deep.
I don't know if I've seen Summer School, but there was talking about obscure. I've actually tried to find it and I don't think it's made available for whatever reason, but we must have had it taped on VHS. Do you remember a movie called I don't know if this is the right title, Student Exchange,
Oh
where these
no.
two like geeky high schoolers decide to pretend that they are from like they somehow hijack the students that are coming from Italy and
Hmm.
one's coming from Paris maybe. And so then in order to kind of have a fresh start in their high school, they pretend to be these people and then they're all popular and then of course as
Yeah.
as typical 80s fashion they find out and it's a whole thing. But yeah. That was funny. Heathers was a big one. I liked
Yeah,
Heathers
yeah.
a lot.
That was good.
I really liked Crocodile Dundee
Oh, I just showed that to my
movies too.
daughter, literally. And she thought it was one of the better things. She was like, "It's
Did
so much
she?
fun.
Oh,
I love Crocodile Dundee."
that makes me happy. Um, let's see. I'm like,
There's just too many, actually. I
there
feel
are. I
like,
know. I was
yeah, it's
looking. Oh, yeah. So there's just too many.
yeah, there's too many. And I was very into like I loved Aliens, and yeah, I think I can't remember what year that was because I remember watching Alien, and that was like in the '70s. I'm pretty sure. But
Was
Aliens,
okay. Was that the
man,
sequel?
that was a sequel,
Okay.
and I was like, again, I like blowing up stuff. I was like really into things blowing up, but I always was like a big like right now I'm a huge sci-fi fan. My that was my dad's thing is sci-fi, and I was like massively into sci-fi and still am. So like I love 80s sci-fi, but actually I kind of like sci-fi even more now because it's somewhat a little more cerebral sometimes. It can
Okay.
be. like I loved Arrival when it came out because I thought it was very cerebral sci-fi type of thing. It was emotional, whereas a lot of the '80s sci-fi was like just blowing shit up. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah. Sci-fi is maybe because I'm a girl, but it's probably my least favorite genre. Not a
interesting.
fan. Yeah.
What
Uh,
is it? Why not? What about it?
I don't know. It's not of interest, nor is fantasy.
Yeah.
Like you can't pay me to watch a Lord of the Rings movie. I don't like that at all.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What is it though? Like is like something just you just don't
I,
find it interesting.
I think it's boring somehow.
Interesting.
It's not
Okay.
enough story. I don't know. I'm sure obviously someone who's into it will argue that,
Yeah.
but I just like with Lord of the Rings, it seemed like the same scene over and over, just with a different backdrop,
I get that. I can
So I
get
was like,
that.
this is boring.
Yeah.
But
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, I actually do like those. I never got into Harry Potter. I was like,
mhm.
it's not my thing. But I did like Lord of the Rings. But see, I didn't ever like when something becomes like too many sequels.
Yeah.
I have a real problem with that. It's kind of like, now a lot of the like there's a lot of great '80s TV shows too. That's a whole
Mhm.
nother thing,
Oh,
right?
sitcoms, that's my
Sitcoms,
jam. I
like
love a
there's a whole
sitcom.
great level of sitcoms, but like now they're streaming
Mhm.
shows and like if something goes on too many seasons, I just stop watching it. Like I'm like, just can we wrap this up? Like I'm
Yeah.
kind of a wrap it up person. Like if it's not done after 3 seasons, I'm just kind of done with it. It's like,
I like something a little more than 3 seasons, but if I agree, if it goes for too many, they jump the shark, so to speak, it
yes,
seems.
yeah. You can tell
But
it's for money at some point. You could just be like,
yeah,
oh, they're just trying to keep this alive for the ratings and money.
The
So
Goldbergs was a great
that's
show
a good
for
show.
both nostalgia, so it was set in the
Yeah.
80s, so we get that taste of nostalgia. And I think I mean that's one where I stopped watching it. It went on, I don't know, maybe it's still on, but it went on a little too long.
Yeah, like Stranger Things is like the throwback to the '80s too.
Mhm, yeah,
Like,
yep.
and I loved the first couple seasons and I was like, yeah, I think I'm done here. I was like, I've had enough '80s. So, and it was just like, I don't know, it was different, but I think that even like '80s sitcoms had like a different feel to them and kind of the family ties type of thing. And My Two Dads, that was great.
They
I'm so into
did.
that.
And because it's interesting. I was trying to put my finger on it. So I don't know. Have you seen the Upshaws with Mike Epps and
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Tootie? What's her name? Tootie
Kimberly
from
Fields, like,
Kim Fields.
yeah,
They're pretty good at it, and Wanda Sykes, and I really like them.
yeah.
But again, like the kids in it, I don't know. It's a little
I
too.
know.
There's something too glossy or something about it because it's
Too
a
glossy.
family sitcom as well, but it doesn't have the same feel as the 80s ones do.
Yeah. The glossy thing is, I think, a good comment. It's just a product of the time of this kind of curated experience. Like these kids are very kind of put together, very glossy, very like worldly.
Yeah.
And like '80s kids are fairly dumb. Like, just just kind of like
Well, and even the sets and the costuming, I appreciate when somebody wears the same shirt twice
right,
in a
right.
show, or like you can see like this is this character's wardrobe and the house isn't perfect. It's not like a
Yes.
staged home.
Yes.
It seemed like a real lived in average family, and
Yes.
everything seems a little too perfect now.
That's a good point. I mean, and it's also like if you have kids, your kids love to wear the same outfit every day. So you have to like force them to wear other things. Like it's like a real thing. So it's like, okay, like I could see the kid wearing like the same, like you said, same shirt days on end or same sweater or jacket.
Mhm.
And I just think like nothing's that clean. Like it's, especially when you have kids, it's very difficult to keep a very nice, clean home. So like if you're like on a sitcom now, it's like I don't think so. Like
Yeah.
that's not normal.
It's
Um,
one of the reasons I love the show Roseanne, partially because of its
oh man,
realism.
yeah,
And they wore the same outfits. Their house was just normal. And I brought this up, but it was a progressive show back then.
yeah,
She's a strange person
Well, it's
now,
gone
but
strange. It's gone
yeah,
very bad. Let's just
yeah.
put it that way. It's gone weird.
But in the 80s, it was a kind of revolutionary show to
Yeah.
show kind of a working class family. And I think part of why I like it is because they seemed real and those kids weren't annoying. They just seemed
Yeah.
relatable, I guess.
Right. The angstiness of teenage years, the little kid and the stuff little kids get into
Hmm.
and the arguments and the fights. It's like, man, and I think that's kind of what people love about the 80s. It's just felt real. Whereas
Real.
now, I think
Yeah.
there's a projection of that families are perfect and that, well, we're not going to show you the difficult side
Yeah.
of
Good
life.
point. Good
We're
point.
not going to do that with you.
And they show
And
parents making mistakes.
yeah,
Now
yes,
it's, I feel like there's just so much pressure on parents to be so
yeah,
accepting of everything and anything. And I don't know how realistic that is. Like a child
yeah,
has a problem and sometimes a parent will make a mistake.
yeah, yeah. That was a
Uh,
lot of the 80s. A lot of the parents were like, "What? What's happening in my life here?" Like, it's like your kids are all over the place and stuff, and, you would see, like, a great movie. It's really on the edge. It's 1989, but Parenthood, it's going towards
I
the
just
90s
listened
with
to that
Steve
episode
Martin.
actually.
Oh,
Yes. Hmm.
such a great movie, so much heart, but, like, I really identify with that movie because, I mean, everybody's known someone who's had those type of families, where, like, there's so much drama and the drama between family members, the difficulty of growing up, maybe the dad wasn't there for you. Like, it just felt like this is how people are growing up in different parts of all over the world, the United
Yeah.
States especially. And now it's like, let's not really talk about that. Like, let's present this family as very kind of well to do. They live in this really nice house. We couldn't possibly have a show about a family in a trailer park. And if it
No.
is, it's on TLC and it's like extreme. It's overly extreme.
Yes. Good point. Don't even get me started about reality shows.
It's right. It's like it's extreme levels that no one is actually, very small percentage of population is actually doing these things. So it's all extremism. So I'm like, where's the, like, moderate aspect of life here? I
Hmm.
mean, it's like where a lot of people are living in that space. Why aren't you showing that? Like,
Which is probably why the 80s were so beloved,
yeah,
right?
right.
There's mass appeal to it and
Yeah.
relatability.
So how do we get back to that? Maybe
I
not
know, I
the
was just
80s, but, like,
thinking.
on some level, how do we get back to some version
Well,
of
it does feel like we're kind of like bursting at the seams a little bit with
mm,
I don't, I think there's a big awareness about, all the talk about AI and
mhm.
all of the wonderful things that we get from that and the internet, but with every whatever, it's with great power comes great responsibility, and those things are being invented without the forethought of what could
Yeah.
secondary issues that might come from that. uh but people moving away from Twitter, like there are conversations that I
Yeah.
didn't think would ever happen, but I don't know, Darian.
Well, I think extremism has a bubble, and the bubble is bursting. Maybe not quickly, but I think anytime you move so far in one direction societally, there's going to be a kickback at some point,
Which it
But
feels like we're in that
we're in
space
that
right now, but
space.
I
Yeah.
can't envision the post bubble breaking, what that might look
Right.
like.
Well, what the problem is that humans don't normally just come back to the center. They just swing to another version of extremism. It's just like, hey, we went this way. Now it's like, it's like, oh, I hate my smartphone. No smartphone. Sierra,
You're
live in the
right.
woods.
There are, yeah, I was
Like,
just
it's
going to
like,
say these what are they, like survivalist types? What's the
yeah,
word for it? Yeah, it's like you go all in or all out.
all in.
There's yeah.
Yeah, it's like, no, you couldn't possibly have some elements of all these things. It's like forsake electronic stuff. Just go
Yeah.
full on. It's like, whoa, let's take it easier. That's like,
Yeah, like the it's like a libertarian viewpoint,
yeah,
which isn't very realistic. Yeah,
no.
go off the grid, but you still need society. You still need society.
I know this is the great thing about these podcasts. It goes into different things. It's like
Mhm.
I watched this great documentary series on HBO Max. I guess it's Max now. It's called The Anarchist. And it was all
Okay.
about, and it's great. It's unbelievably good. And it's just kind of like anarchy and, proponents of it. But you realize very quickly, like outside of if it grows to like more than 100+ people, you have
Yep.
to have rules and regulations. You cannot have, we're like everything decentralized. Like it just doesn't
It
work.
doesn't work. It
Like
doesn't. It sounds wonderful in
in
theory,
theory, it's like
but it's in practice it does not work. It
at
just doesn't.
all. And you see it coming. You're like, oh, this is going to fall apart. This is like so easy, like to predict. And so I think it's interesting. Like we're not going to swing back to the 80s, but and I'm not saying we should just go backwards, but I'm saying there were some things that actually were pretty good about that time.
Mhm.
And maybe some of those things would be interesting to have now. Not all of them. I mean, there's some music that I regret listening to. They're great.
Like what?
I mean, there's some really stupid songs
Yeah.
back in the day, but maybe they're kind of fun and like kind of, oh, it's just a kickback,
Mhm.
for those times. But I still think there's a lot of fun. Like the 80s was fun to me. I felt like it was a lot of fun, at least
I
as my time during that time. And maybe some
Yes.
adults felt very differently about it. I don't
Mhm.
know, but
Well, I do have a question on that thread. So, part of why I revisit watching 80s movies and they're super silly, and I just accept that, and therefore I enjoy the
yeah.
rewatch. Can you think of an 80s movie that you hadn't seen until you were an adult, but it's hard to watch something that I guess where I'm going is, can you still enjoy it for what it is, or is it hard to put yourself back in the 80s time mindset, I guess, when you're watching it?
No, I just enjoy it for what it is. Like okay, for instance, like when I watch like Revenge of the Nerds,
Mhm.
and I love that movie. Now there's lots of things in that movie that like maybe like now I'm like, wow, that's probably not good,
There's
you know.
there's some parts that are now watching it, I'm like, "Ooh,
Yeah,
that's hard to watch,"
it's
but
like, but you
yeah.
know what? Honestly, I'm still laughing. Like, I'm
Agreed,
still
agreed.
like,
And I think I agree. I guess, I have the same I'm able to separate
yeah,
and not put today's lens on things. But what I guess I'm saying is there a movie that you had not seen originally in the '80s that you watched as an adult, and are you still
oh,
able to enjoy it in that way? I
that'd be
think
that's a
that's the difference, is
That's
what I'm trying to
difficult, like,
understand.
that I just hadn't seen at all in the '80s, and then
Yeah.
I watched it now. That's a definite no. I mean, like, it's very, very rare if somebody says like, you brought up something, student exchange. I haven't watched it, and I haven't watched it yet. I will watch it, but it's very difficult for me to, like, pinpoint something I didn't watch because I literally watch so much TV.
Yeah.
in the 80s. I
Well,
was
if you're able to find Student Exchange and watch it, let me know. I think it's one of
okay.
those that's hard to find. The
Yeah.
reason I wondered is because I had a conversation with my co-host from the Rocky Show,
Yeah.
Ryan, about Big Trouble in Little China,
Oh, yeah, Kurt Russell, yeah.
which I've seen that a bazillion times. I
Me
remember that
too.
was one of my go-tos when I was a
Yeah,
kid, and he hadn't seen it before. So he's watching it as a
yeah.
middle-aged man, and we had very different experiences. He was like, "What the hell is going on in this movie?" I'm like, "It's just part of it. Just go with it."
Yeah,
And so that's why I wondered if you're able to kind of set yourself in an
yeah,
80s mindset while watching, even if you haven't seen it before.
yeah. I mean, my dad literally was so obsessed with movies, and he still is. Like, he would just show every movie to us, and we just ate it alive, like, and we just kept watching and watching. So I would think it'd be difficult for me to watch something that I hadn't seen because I've seen most of it. But even if I saw it, honestly, I probably just recognize like, okay, yeah, this was the 80s, like
Yeah.
I don't think currently, I could be wrong, that I would have this huge offense to it. I just think, well, that's just the time it was in.
Yeah.
And I think people need to recognize that people are very different. Like you like to tell yourself, I would be different during that time. Actually, you probably wouldn't be. Actually, how could you say that? You don't know. Like if how would you know if you'd be like that during that
That's a
time?
good point. In some ways, you're like, well, I probably would have, because I can say now there are certain things that I see as so obvious.
Sure.
And I'm like, 100 years from now, we're going to look back on this time and be like, why did we do that?
Yeah.
But not necessarily the offense piece, just that the feel and the theme of 80s movies
Yeah.
is so different than it
Yeah.
is now that
Yeah.
I enjoy it. It's a blast from the past for me.
Yes.
But, so I love that your daughter's watching it, because someone who didn't grow up in that time watching it might be like, this seems odd,
I think she just likes the fun.
Yeah.
And that's just what I liked. I just think it was so much fun. And also, a lot of those movies were like 90 minutes. All right. I didn't have to spend
They
like 3
were.
hours. So that's another huge component of those movies, I feel. They were
Good
very quick
point.
to watch, get in, get out. The plot moved quickly. And, that means there wasn't a huge amount of development sometimes with the characters, but also they didn't spend a lot of time making you like understand this person's history and background. They're like, just assume this is what happened. This kid's going to school. He doesn't have a ride, something like that.
Yeah, there is a lot of just go with it. Just
go with it, and I actually really appreciate that.
I do too. And I actually am not opposed to a long movie, but a comedy. So a lot of these fun 80s movies are action adventure, or they're comedies that you can have a quick pace. 90 minutes works. Whereas, a lot of the dramas does take a little bit longer to do some character development. But yeah, 80s are full of cheaply made, but pretty well written comedies. And
and I find it very difficult to find a good comedy that I like these days, because I feel like the comedy these days is often like, it just feels very forced, the comedy. And I'm just like, I kind of see this coming. I know where this is going.
It hits you over the head with it, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's just too obvious.
Yeah.
And it's often done by huge stars.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels fake to me. I don't feel this person's actually this funny. Or the funniness is like, I don't know how to say, it's kind of like deadpan all the time, or it's like just I'm watching it, I'm like, I knew you were gonna say that. Like, come on, like it's.
Yeah, it's like, where's the subtlety? I feel like there was a lot more subtle, like little nuanced jabs, or a lot of one-liners, maybe.
A lot of one-liners, yes, that it was just like a song. If you heard a song and you just can't stop hearing it. And that was a lot of the movies. That's why I remembered a lot of the quotes, because I couldn't stop hearing these one-liners. It was just
I'll be
constant.
back.
I'll be back.
Yeah.
I'd watch, Running Man or something. I think it was in the 90s, but just like, what happened to Buzzsaw? He had to split. It's like, it's just it's just like, I don't know. It was just, you watching Die Hard or something from the past. It's like, it just is like, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. It's just like all these things. And it just felt like the sets were real. There was actually stunt people doing stuff. Like somebody was getting hurt.
Yes.
Now it's like, okay, this is so CGI, so fake. Like, I want to know that they're cold. I want to see them be cold, actually. Like, that's not existing so much.
Agreed. There's all these stories of those action guys, Stallone and Schwarzenegger, and the things that they endured.
Yeah.
To film a certain scene, and that endears me to it more.
Right. Yeah, most definitely. Man, this is awesome. I could go on forever about this, Katie.
80s, right?
I mean, literally the 80s is nonstop amazingness for that. Thank you so much for just a fun conversation.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I very much enjoy your show. It's smart and thoughtful and engaging. So I feel privileged to be on.
Thank you so much. Well, at least tell everybody about how they can check out Retromade and get more of their 80s fix.
Yeah, I mean, if Speaking of, if you like 80s, I have a nice nostalgic trip down memory lane for you. My show's called Retromade, your pop culture rewind. And we have themed seasons. So the first season, the theme is Kurt Russell and Patrick Swayze, our ultimate everyman. Next season will be something entirely different. But I cover a movie, uh, and then whatever time that movie came out, May of 1985, I throw in pop culture events, music, TV, all of the things that were going on at that time. So it's kind of a half and half show. So, and then, I have guests on as well. So that's kind of a fun show if you like 80s and 90s. So
Yeah.
Retromade. It's on YouTube as well as, wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you like Rocky, I also co-host a Rocky series podcast called One More Round, also on YouTube and wherever you find podcasts.
Lovely. Katie, thank you so much. And we'll be in touch.
Awesome. Thank you. And have a safe and happy move to Colorado.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.